and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a podcast where we read about some Dungeons and Dragons and discuss how we might include it in our role-playing campaigns. This is part 2 of our 2-part special on how to create your sort of first session, your different bits and pieces. If you really want to get into Dungeons and Dragons, I'm sure you're already into it, but if you want to create your own session, your own stuff, this is the place to start. So make sure you check the first episode where we talk about how to create your own sort of level 1 town, your starting town for your adventurers. But I've completely forgot where I'm going with this, but my name's Fiona.
Hello, Fiona.
Hello, Fiona.
I'm just going to introduce myself. Hello.
Yes, do it.
I'm here. I'm Ryan. I need no introduction, apparently. How is everybody doing? How are you doing, Fiona?
I'm doing well. It's instantly, as soon as it's like, oh, it's a 2-parter, everything goes to shit because we've never done one before.
I know.
It's like,
sorry.
All structure is out the window, but I am good, thank you.
Down the rules.
Oh, no, it's all about rules.
Hey, you got your creative brain on because you're going to need this.
Yes, I've had extra coffee. I'm ready, I'm vibing, I'm good to go. So what are we doing today, Ryan?
Well, we are taking the safety brakes off because we are approaching this from the other direction now. So last time we went small upwards where we were creating our own DM's world, an adventure location that you could throw level 1 players in and in theory start a campaign from by going small and fleshing it out as we went along. But we are doing totally the opposite. We are going to go big and go down this time. We're going to make an entire world and we're going to keep narrowing down until we get to a place where we can employ what I like to call the yes policy, which is another way of dealing with D&D and being a DM, where you can start a campaign without actually having to specifically do any of the micro detail that you may necessarily need to sort of worry about. And as a reminder, if you haven't listened to part 1, all of this information and all of the guides you could ever want in terms of random lists and inspiration and ideas can come from every book and film you've ever watched, but also from Google and search engines all over. Just like now, random name generators are a fantastic example. If you need a little bit of help, shove it in Google and you can find it. But we are also using the Dungeon Master's Guide and Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which I think is quite a claim. Every time I say it, I don't think it is everything. I mean, yeah, well, we'll see. I'm going to throw some decisions at you. If you've listened to part 1, then that's really, really good, because I'm going to immediately start off by saying we are ignoring part 1. This is going to be a totally new world. Unless you want to throw it in. No, I mean, as I say.
Throwing that piece of paper away, Ryan, it's gone.
Oh, it's already gone. It's in the bin. It's gone. So we are starting with an entirely new world, and you are going to create this entire thing for me, and you are going to be amazed at the shite in your brain as you put it down. But if everybody wants to do this and play along with us and genuinely have a go at this, I would recommend you do it, because until you try it, you won't realize how good your ideas sound. And remember, your ideas sound way better to other people than they do to you. You're your own worst critic. Don't let it stop you.
Agreed.
The first question for you is what level would you like the starting players to be? Ooh. This is not necessarily going to be a level 1 campaign. I'm going to give you 3 options. You can have Heroes of the Realm, where the players have reached some point between level 5 and 10. They are reasonably accomplished, locally famous, and can start dealing with issues on a citywide basis. They can be Masters of the Realm, which is level 11 to 16, where they have reached sort of national fame and are now dealing with issues that may deal with kingdom-wide threats and threats to entire countries. They are very accomplished and have magical items galore. Or they can be Masters of the World, where level 17 to 20, they have reached superheroic capability and are now dealing with threats on a multi-planar level. What I would say is that all 3 you are capable of. It's just a mindset change, and we're going to be dealing with this slightly differently. And it's more of a case of realigning how you look at things in terms of the yes policy coming more into play. So do you want to go for a lower level 5 to 10, or do you want to go for a mid-level 11 to 16, or a high level 17 to 20?
Let's go for 11 to 15. I think that's I really can't imagine ever running a really, really high level campaign, but 11 to 15, I think I'd be capable of. So let's go for that.
Perfect. So Masters of the Realm. So we are going to say that we're going to have 4 level 11 characters joining our campaign. These are going to be pretty accomplished. If they're spellcasters, they're going to have level 6 spells, which is pretty impressive. I think by that point, things like almost on the cusp of being able to teleport, but they can teleportation circle at least. I think druids can teleport at level 6. They can throw chain lightnings and disintegrate spells, and they've got all kinds of mind control available to them. The fighters can now attack 3 times or 6 times with action surges. Balance and any planning you've had in your campaign by this point begins to, well, you need to learn to improvise, because players can do stuff at this level that's fairly heroic in capability. So that's good. What we're going to do now is we're going to go through the core assumptions of D&D, and we're going to see which ones you would like to keep and which ones you'd like to change.
Oh, okay.
This is, again, it's sort of what world would you like to build? So to start with, gods oversee the world. This assumes that gods are real, that everybody doesn't necessarily believe in them, but nobody can refute their existence, and that belief in the gods can be felt sort of through the worshippers and channeled in that way. Is that good for you? Or would you like a world where the gods don't exist or have very little forgotten influence? Or would you like a world where the gods almost walk the earth themselves?
Ooh, oh gosh. Let's go for gods have very little influence.
Okay, so religion and divine influence is almost non-existent. We have to think about that, whether you want it to be absolutely barriered, like there is something stopping it, or whether it's just custom and tradition has meant that it sort of has been forgotten. Okay, much of the world is untamed, so this assumes that outside of cities and civilized areas, large chunks of the world are wild and full of monsters. Is that something you'd like to keep? Or would you like a world in which almost the entirety of it is untamed? So literally it is like tiny fortified settlements and nobody leaves them? Or would you like a world so heavily populated, sort of Eberron-style world, where large elements of it are utterly safe and more of a sort of political campaign?
Ooh, let's turn it all on its head. Yeah, I definitely want most populated, definitely more political, everything mostly mapped out.
Okay, mostly mapped and mostly civilized. Okay, great.
Yeah.
The world is ancient is the third assumption, that at some point empires have risen and fallen, and there is so much history in the world that people have forgotten it. It enables the ability to come across long lost temples and ruins and dungeons, but also gives you the element to sort of throw random stuff in. Now, would you like that to be the same? Or would you like a world in which civilization is incredibly new and there is no history because the world has just been formed? Or would you like it so that history has almost been forgotten? Some sort of cataclysm has meant that there is so much lost history that people don't even have a sense of their own history here.
I think for this one, I will stick with that. I'd stick that they have no sense of their own history, that there's been some sort of event and they've forgotten their history, essentially. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going even more ancient than normal. We're saying that there's almost an element of like forgetfulness here. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Great. Conflict shapes the world's history. So we're assuming that kingdoms and organizations strife, and that there is sort of a cold war in some elements and political rife in others. Now, we can again stick with that assumption, or we can go down the other way, which is that there is almost entirety of peace. The world is politically stable, and most kingdoms are wedded and locked in political sort of truces with each other. Violence and political, it's more of a sort of a commerce or capitalist look on the world. Or we can say that maybe there is currently open war and that nations are in the actual process of fighting each other at the moment.
Let's go for, I think conflict is interesting, but let's go for like a Cold War-esque type thing. So it's on the brink and it's like an arms race or a race between
so war could kick off at any point, but currently isn't.
Yeah.
but a spark could set it off. Okay, fine. And we're also finally going to say the world is magical. So practitioners of magic are relatively few in number, but the evidence of their craft is everywhere. So potions and magical items exist, although not everybody has access to them. That is the general scope of D&D. Would you like to keep it all balanced, or would you like to say that magic is incredibly rare? So magic users are even rarer than normal. Magic items are even harder to obtain if you want to control the use of magic in the game. Or is magic incredibly common, and magic is used as almost a currency or a system of power, and that lots of people, like a sort of Eberron style setting where magic is sort of invaded into the sort of fabric of the world?
Yeah, let's go for that option. That is almost like a currency. It is so commonplace. It will be unusual for someone who doesn't have any magic.
Okay, so even commoners have access a little bit to basic magic. Okay,
yeah,
that's interesting. Great. So we've got a world where the gods are suppressed or not really believed in as much. It's incredibly civilized, but something happened that's meant that a lot of the history has been lost. Nations are on the edge of war, and magic is everywhere. So that war, if it does kick off, could be utterly terrifying.
Horrific.
Perfect.
Exactly.
So obviously we don't have many gods in this world. Would you like to keep the default set of gods, or would you like to have a go at that? We don't have to flesh it out, but the idea that you've got your own pantheon or religious system. So by that, I mean, there's everything from, you can have like a list of gods where everybody believes in with different sort of aspects to them, or it could just be very simple in the sense that there is a good god and a bad god, or like a flavor of good and a flavor of bad, or maybe there are lots and lots of hundreds of different gods that each represent a different idea, and that they've all been scattered so much that nobody really has a sense of which is the true god anymore, and that's kind of why they were forgotten. Or maybe there just absolutely are no gods and there's just more forces of nature. Like what sort of thing do you want?
Oh, I like that idea of forces of nature. Like it's more of it's like it's a bit. I'm thinking like I don't know if you've ever read or watched American Gods by Neil Gaiman.
Oh yeah.
But the idea that there's loads of gods, but there's like the god of the internet. There's the god of these small things, but over time they lose their power because people stop believing them and believe in other things and worship other things. So I like the idea that's old. Maybe there's loads of gods, but the older ones are definitely more. They're less defined now because people don't believe in them anymore.
But that is perfect. So you've got a system where gods are only as powerful as the number of people that believe in them. And because of that, most gods are not believed in anymore. Or maybe there are. Maybe some gods do exist, but they've taken on the forms of like magic craft and stuff that is in the world that people just don't realize are divine anymore. Anyway, you can big question marks for that. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question is going to be the planes. So are we going to have a situation where you want to play with your own outer planes and outer worlds, or do you want to keep the outer planes in these worlds that have been given to you, like Mount Celestia and the Nine Hells and the Abyss and all of the ones? You can still add your own at later points, or do you want a world where the outer planes are totally of yours to play with, like the god you are?
Like the god I am. Fuck it. Let's do that. Let's make it so it's completely like it's up to me what they are rather than just the base defense. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. We've set the rules of the world. We know the general ideas. What we are now going to do is flesh out a little bit of the specific area that the campaign is going to be set in by building a sort of world around it. We're going to assume, unless you want to really dive in at the deep end, but we're going to assume this is on the material plane like most campaigns are.
Yes.
So all of that sort of works. It may not be your material plane, it may be somebody else's, but it's Fiona's material plane. It is all good. And what we're going to do as well is we're always going to keep the yes policy in mind here. It's very much, I know you are a huge fan and very gifted in improv, and that is the sort of sense of thought that I want you to have here. Exactly.
Okay.
It's all about the idea that no matter how much you plan, people are going to throw things at you you haven't thought about, and you're going to be able to say yes, but, or you're going to say yes, and here's how.
Yeah,
and either you can make things up on the fly, or you've created a framework for yourself that kind of gives the basics, and then you make the detail as you go along. So that macro detail, you're not worried about. You're more worried about the bigger picture here. Okay. So let's have a think about the world. So the world itself, is it a world as we know it on planet Earth with lots of ocean and continents? Is it a world with lots and lots of land mass, so almost entirely landlocked and no sea? Is it a world with lots and lots of sea and not much land mass? Have you got any thoughts? I mean, as I say, the continents don't have to be identical to Earth. So they could just be Earth. You could have a different version of Earth if you wanted to. What sort of world do you want?
I think in my head, I just want to see, I think just completely opposite to zero. So I just want to see a lot of land. I just want a lot of land, very little, like there's no sea perhaps. It's just big lakes here, there and everywhere, but that's it.
Okay. So a lakes sort of environment rather than sea. Okay. Wonderful. Now, is that because it's always been like that? Or was there once a sea and something happened to it? Again, you don't need to make thick stances. You can always change this sort of thing, but just giving you like things to think about.
Let's say it's always been like that.
Always been like that. Yeah. Okay, good. It's deliberate. It's that's how things have always been. Okay, great. So we've got a mostly landlocked world. We know also that mostly it's civilized, which means that most of this world should be pretty populated. So we need to have a think about kingdoms or nations or sort of different factions in your campaign. So first of all, we're going to have a think about the nation you want to be the campaign to be held in, or maybe just the starting place. Now, the problem with level 11 characters or anyone above a certain level is they tend to travel.
Yeah.
So there's no, you can't pin them down. You're not going to be able to sort of make them stay in any one place, unfortunately. So you may end up having a campaign that drifts across lots of different nations, but we're going to have one that we start in.
Okay.
So if you have a think, what sort of government type do you want this nation to have? So if you need a bit of inspiration, the Dungeon Master's Guide on pages 18 and 19 has got some great options that go absolutely everything from an autocracy, which is one where one hereditary ruler wields absolute power. So like a sort of, like a king, for instance, or like a royal line where they have absolute power. A democracy where the citizens vote for the leaders. You can have feudalism where the land is divided up into chunks and knights and lords each have a chunk and they serve a bigger chunk, and, like a medieval British sort of system. You can have anything from that all the way through to, I mean, some of the options here are pretty cool. A magocracy. So people who are more powerful with magic govern, and the people at the top of the magic tree are the ones that wield the power. I mean, what sort of nation would you like?
It makes sense with magic being such commonplace, but there would be the highest ranking spellcasters would be the ones with the most power. So a magocracy.
Okay, so we're going to start with a magocracy.
Yeah.
So this nation is based on a magocracy where the more powerful with magic you are, the higher up you are. Okay. How brutal is this regime? Is there a system of regulated combat or promotion where you can prove your ability with exams or with some sort of trial? Or is this a case where with sabotage or outright violence, you can force your way to the top using your skill of power? I'm thinking more of, as I say, like a stable environment, or more of a sort of red priests of, and I can't remember the name of the nation, but there's a very traditional D&D sense where it's all about being very backstabby and it's a really horrible, aggressive world.
Okay. Let's go for, I love the idea. Jacob talked about this recently. Like he's running a campaign where it's like acquisitions incorporated, but everything is just full of paperwork. So if you're doing a spell, you get a magic item, it says, you need to fill out all these paperwork in triplicate before you can cast a spell. So I just love the idea that it's just full of paperwork. So it's tests and applications and to get into the government and then build it up from
so
there.
This is a heavily regulated magocracy with rules and order. Okay, so I would say this is probably a lawful society on the lawful to chaotic sort of aspect of this. Yeah. Okay, that's really, really cool. And have a think about the people right at the top. So this magocracy, is there a governing panel of people, like a sort of mage circle of people that get together? Or is there one person at the top? I'm thinking of previous sessions we've had where you think about like the Gith who ruled over by a lich who's made their way to the top because they're super powerful. Maybe there's a genie at the top, or a devil, a high ranking, like, because devils are incredibly lawful in the way they have rules and things. Or is it mortals and there's like lots of them? What sort of power would you like? Or would you like the power at the top to be hidden and mysterious?
That's interesting. I think I like the idea that there is like some sort of, it basically basically like a PM's cabinet. So there is one leader, but they have a whole cabinet which they've chosen through various protocols and stuff, and then they have regular meetings.
So there is a leader, and they choose the council that run the country for them. Wonderful.
Yes, exactly.
That's brilliant. You could work with that, because is the leader known, or are they secret?
Oh, I think they're known. 100%.
And are they mortal, or are they something weirder? Or do they appear mortal?
Yeah, appear mortal, but there's something else
wrong with them. Yeah, like maybe.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah,
mind flayer, undead. What sort of who is who rules?
Ooh, I'd love the idea that it's one of those mind flayer Alhoons, that sort of got to power. Yeah.
So mind flayers have actually infiltrated in. Do you think it's mind flayers are everywhere, or do you think this one mind flayer broke away and was incredibly jealous of other mind flayers, and there are no other mind flayers of them? Or as I say, are mind flayers prevalent?
I think it's one that's broken away. And it's like that sort of thing has made its way up the ranks, and then has just always been that is managing to keep control of everyone else, and chooses those closest to them. I'm just describing our own politics right now.
Yeah. No. But this is great. Real life is so inspiring for making parodies or extreme versions of, or in some cases less extreme, and it's still crazy versions of what's happening. I mean, that's absolutely fine. So we've got we've got a mind flayer at the top, and there are no other mind flayers that they're aware of within this society, but the mind flayer is hidden. They appear to be a normal person, and they pick a panel of mages that then govern for them, and that is regulated by tests. Great. That is an entire basis for a nation there. That is amazing. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a think about 3 other nations that we're going to have, and we're going to give them, again, just that sort of one sentence description like we did before, where we were coming up with other towns. We're going to have 3 neighboring nations, and then we're going to describe roughly what they are, and then roughly what their relationship with the first nation is. Okay. What sort of government types do you want? Do you want there to be another majocracy, a competing majocracy? Do you want them all to be majocracies, or do you want them to be different?
I definitely think there should be a competing one. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so there's one other majocracy. How is it different? Is it exactly the same, and there was some sort of civil war, and they are 2 sides of the same coin, or do they fundamentally disagree on how they do things?
Yeah, they fundamentally disagree on everything, but they are very similar in structure. So it is like that sort of thing where you criticize someone, but you realize you're criticizing yourself because they're exactly like you.
Great. So another majocracy. Let's have a one sentence description of it. How would you describe this majocracy to somebody? Is it chaotic and brutal? Is it even more regulated or just as regulated? Is it ruled by one person or by a panel of people?
I think this time this one is just one person. That's like the leader, essentially. Let's go for that.
There's a majocracy that rules through absolute power of one person. Do they rule with an iron fist, or is it quite benevolent?
Problem is with I just want to create everything as evil now, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to make it so it's a good person.
Good person. So there is one very powerful person who has taken ownership for the greater good, and they are trying to do good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. Okay, so there's your second nation. We need a third. What sort of thing? As I say, there are everything from democracies to dictatorships to monarchies to oligarchies and republics and theocracies where religion is a thing and people worship gods. So what sort of nation do you want to create?
There's one that's I've never been able to pronounce these. It's a militocracy, where it's just military.
Okay.
I think I like the idea, even though it's like magic is currency, they are trying to bring back the fine art of just fighting without magic, and it's just brute force and brute.
I see. So there's one nation that are rejecting the use of magic, or at least trying to become, so military might.
Not reliant on it.
Okay, great. So, there's your third nation. That's fantastic. So there's a military-based regime where military strength and the ability with arms is the most important thing. Wonderful. And is the entire nation ruled in a sort of military way with rank and file and officers and that sort of promotion sort of aspect to it?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, it is just like a big army base, and they've got all the ranks and stuff, I think. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. There's your third nation. And your fourth nation, What sort of thing do you want? I mean, as I say, there's democracies where people vote in. You could have a kleptocracy, which is sort of almost like a sort of capitalistic society where it's who's got the most money is the one in charge. Like we've had campaigns with guilds and traders in charge, and sort of there's like a voting, but it's a very specific people who get to vote. Or maybe the citizens get to vote. Or maybe, I mean, you can throw random things in. Maybe there's a nation where everyone is undead, or maybe everybody is immortal. Or did you have what sort of fourth nation do you want?
All right, so we've got loads of magic ×2, and then one just fighting with no things. So I guess, what's that one at the top? Meritocracy. Oh god.
Yeah.
But it's the most intelligent and educated people oversee society. So it's like, it is all the admin, but without too much magic and too much. It's all about the organization of stuff. I'd say, rather than those powers.
Meritocracy, fine. So we've got a fourth nation where it's the people who are the most intelligent do the work effectively.
Yeah.
So there's a formal, like lots of education, lots of maybe organizations and guilds are really important in this place. And
exactly, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so there's your four nations. Do you want to throw some names at them, or do you want to keep them vague? I mean, as I said, we can come back to names later if you want.
Let's come back later to them. Let's see what we've got. Yeah.
Great. Now, do you want there to also be in this world some smaller city-states, or do you want just little sort of independent places nestled amongst, or do you want it so that the bigger nations of this world have taken over and it's only large factions that get to do things?
Oh, yeah, some independent city-states would be cool. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And we're going to just flesh out the idea of maybe one of them now. So a city that is independent. Why is it independent? What did it do to earn that independence? Has it always been independent, or did it have to fight for it, or did nobody want it?
Yeah, nobody wanted it. It's like in between two of the nations. Yeah, nobody wanted it.
Okay, so the absolute opposite of what normally happens. No city wants this. No nation wants this city. Why? What is wrong with this city? Is it cursed? Is it tainted? Is it just really stupid or poor or aggressive? Like what is the reason for this?
I guess. Well, your idea about the thing that's undead, this is just a whole city-state that's just full of undead, but they want to be recognized as their own people. But in order to do that, there'll be lots of time and resources used by the nations, and they see it as not a priority, and they don't want to waste that time and resources on them when they are quite happily able to keep it. And they know that I think any of these nations actually could take that city-state if they want, because it's undead, but at the same time, nobody wants to do it because it might be, it's the Cold War. So as soon as they take it, then war is declared, because the others will see it as an aggression.
So the undead actually aren't aggressive. They're quite hospitable and pleasant, almost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right, so a city-state full of undead. Brilliant. That is fantastic. Have the undead always been there, or did people find that the dead from other nations have started getting up and walking towards the city-state?
Oh my goodness.
Or, is there just some sort of huge burial pit below the city that seems to be sentient now?
I like that idea that the people's undead after, I don't know, a month or two, they just get up and go. So that again, because we talked about like the gods here are not as powerful or limited, so there's very little need for pomp and circumstance of like, burying the dead per se, or like doing services and saying that they're gone, because the dead just rise up and they're not harmful. They just know they have to go to this place, and that's where they'll be accepted.
Okay, well that is incredibly cool, and that puts a huge spin on the world. Okay, so the dead walk in this world, it is quite normal for. Is that to everybody, or do you have to have a certain strength of soul and character? Like, is it only like when people get to like a certain level that they're powerful enough to come back? So it's not everybody, or is it literally the masses all rise?
Because that leads into zombie territory, doesn't it? I think nobody knows why. It's like a 50-50 chance. And like that's the thing, because maybe again this is the where like afterlife and stuff comes in, but maybe there's not much of a belief in afterlife. You either are just gone or you return, and you don't know which is worse. That sort of like you are, you're sort of exiled to this place because nobody wants you around here.
Oh, that's so good. Right. I like this one. This is fantastic. Okay. Wonderful. So we've got our four nations. We've got at least one city-state, and we've got some really good core assumptions on the world and how it works. Next question I'm going to ask you is, what sort of campaign do you want to run? What I would say is, when you build a campaign, especially from the big sort of world and going down, it can be very easy to throw so many plot points and ideas at the table that you lose track of the sort of campaign you want to run.
Yeah.
So is this going to be a hack and slash dungeon diving adventure for lots of combat? Would you like it to be a political adventure? Would you like it to so lots of talking and social interaction and characters thinking outside of the combat zone and being more clever with social interaction? Would you like to show off your murder mystery-esque ability by having like a mystery-based campaign where they're trying to solve something and it's more of a sort of like hidden thing? Or would you like it to be a story-driven campaign where there is quite a fixed set of events happening and the characters need to deal with that? Some sort of cataclysm or large war or something happening that's causing I'm thinking more of like, for instance, High Rollers, the first campaign, there obviously were previous events, but there was somebody who was attacking a kingdom and they needed to deal with it. The first campaign of Critical Role, obviously Vecna was rising, so they had to deal with that. So that's more of a story-based campaign. What sort of thing do you want to do?
Just because it would be more of a challenge, I guess. I like the idea that the players, they are impacting everything. So like it's because it's like this knife edge with the Cold War. So I think that a politically driven campaign, which might sound a bit boring for some people because it's not hack and slash, but the idea that one wrong word or wrong could just entire nations could fight and they have an actual impact on it rather than being caught up and swept up with the story events that would be with a story-driven campaign.
Perfect. And as we've got to think about that as well, because they're level 11 characters. These are characters of some renown. They have a certain amount of kudos and fame within the nation that they come from. So my question to you is, are they going to be affiliated with this First Nation? Are they citizens of it? Or are you going to leave that open for people to decide? What sort of thing? Or do you want to leave them as total neutrals, Mighty Nine style, messing around and doing what they want?
I think I've just said I want to make it challenging, but for ease, I will make them part of the First Nation.
Okay, part of the First Nation. There is nothing wrong with that because the players can always decide they want to abandon or do something else later. That's not a problem. Okay, so that's wonderful. And how are they part of the First Nation? Are they involved and important in some way? Do they have ranking office, or are they known adventurers that have been conscripted, or do you want to leave that all open to the players and you give them a set of rules that say you've got to have a certain amount of renown, but what that is up to you?
Yeah, I think I'd leave it up to them because again, I think with that First Nation, the way we've set it up, it means that they're allowed to be spellcasters as they want, but they know that obviously the higher the spellcasters, the more important they are. So whether or not it's like an embassy, like a scouting mission or something like that, I'm taking it to another nation. That could be up to them if they want to do that. Yeah.
Perfect. And do you want to set any rules for the players in terms of the classes that they pick? Do you want to insist that everybody picks a spellcasting class, or do you want to let people choose, but with the understanding that if you pick a barbarian, then you are definitely seen as weird because you don't have a magical ability? Do you want to force an extra feat upon people so everybody has like an ability to cast a cantrip or something? Like I'm thinking more of like a dragon mark feat or like a Xanathar's guide magic, like racial magic feats. Like what do you want to set any rules or just leave it totally open?
No, I think that's a good idea. Actually, I think I'd make it so that they can play any class they want. I think that's a key thing. But yeah, like I think it's like magic adept is the feat where they can take a cantrip or something. So they do have some magical ability, but if it's weaker, then they are looked down upon in the society. But I think I might say that races or different kinds of races, like it is not beyond the races in the player's handbook, just because I feel like some of the other races in like Xanathar and stuff like that are great, but it's like if you're not magical, but then you're also a lion person, that's going to detract away from the whole thing. So it is just the basic.
Okay, so focused players. Now, is that because the entire civilization is like that, or is it just because this particular party is? I'm more of, is this a society where the other races don't exist because it is very strict on who it lets in? There are immigration things, or there is a fear of different races, or maybe the other races are part of other kingdoms, or is it more just because you want to limit party and the characters themselves? There's no wrong answer here, by the way.
No, I think it's just because the way I see it, like there are some really cool races out there, and which would be cool to try. But I think it's like, well, I'm this person. Even like even tabaxis and like I think they're cool, but I think for a political drama, I don't want that to get in the way of any impact and stuff like, oh, but you're not allowed in here because you're a tiefling or you're this and stuff. I'd rather just keep it basic, struggle. And I think so the whole First Nation, at least, is the basic races in the Player's Handbook. Yeah.
Perfect. Right. We are fleshing this out nicely. Okay. So we will need a name for the nation that they start in. So it is a magocracy where one person has control, but they have a sort of council. Now, do you think the nation is named after the person, or do you think it's named after an event or a geographical location?
We'll go for event. We'll go for an event.
An event. Okay, so maybe an event in the nation's founding, something that caused the nation to exist, or some sort of cataclysm that happened before, or maybe a coronation that caused the person to become in charge. What sort of event?
Okay. Let's go for like a environmental event. So I'm thinking, I know everyone always goes for like volcanoes and stuff, but I'm just thinking like maybe a flood.
Doesn't matter if people go volcanoes. You can go volcanoes if you want.
No, volcanoes are boring and unoriginal. I'm going to go for a flood of some sort, like some sort of swell, I guess.
Okay, so is it that most of this nation's land is floodable or flooded? So there's waterlogged across the entire nation, like everything is very muddy, rivers run very high, like water doesn't have anywhere to go? Or is it just that there once was a flood?
I'm thinking, I think you've put it as well in when we talked about Eastwind, but like the sort of Venetian-esque, so that everything is above water and it allows it to rise. But at any point, if the floods go over, then everything is covered by at least a flood of water. But I think they've built it in a way. Yeah, they built it in a way.
So there is water everywhere in a sort of weird way, but it is landlocked because they built across it.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot we landlocked it. Yeah. Okay.
No. You can change this as you want. There's no fixed rules here. Okay, great. So the nation, we want to kill, something to do with that sort of flooding or the waterlogged, maybe canals in the name, or rivers, rivers of magic, canals of magic, or what sort of like imagery do you like the sound of? Gems or crystals or metals or colors?
Let's go for crystal of some sort.
Crystal.
Think of any crystals now. I'm gonna have to look up any names of diamonds.
That's all right. So like diamonds are a great example, or like a sort of clouded diamonds or colored diamonds, or
Oh, okay. What about again? Maybe we'll just take it straight from like Wizard of Oz, like emerald something, God, this is where any sort of let's
go a bit to sort of get your head around. But once you've got an idea, you can always play with it. So emeralds. Do you want to have water based in the name?
Oh, okay. Actually,
don't have to.
No. This is a choice. Let's see. Looking at this screen. Instead of emeralds, why don't we go for sort of agate, which is that bluey sort of coloured sort of gem.
Yeah.
So agate. God, I'm trying to think of. Fuck it. Let's go for Agatebourgh, like Edinburgh, like Agatebourgh.
Agatebourgh. Yeah,
Agatebourgh.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, well, there we go. Now, do you want this to be the name of the nation or the name of the city that we're going to have the campaign based in or starting in?
We're starting in, I think.
Wonderful. So this is the name of the city. Agatebourgh. Wonderful. Right, there we go. So we know, is this going to be the capital or is this going to be a major city?
Let's go with the capital.
The capital.
Yeah.
Okay, so whoever this mysterious ruler is in this capital.
Yeah.
Let's think about the first impressions of this city. So we are assuming that this city is a capital, is massive, and the yes policy is going to come into play a lot here. Okay. There's so much going on in this city. If players ask if something's possible, the chances are it's going to be yes. It's just whether or not it's behind sort of diplomatic or financial doors or anything. Okay. So first impressions. What's the first impressions of the city? Is it the sheer vastness? Are the buildings super tall and packed in, or is it really spread out? Is it the canals are absolutely everywhere and so that was a bit of a smell? Or maybe there is no smell. The whole thing smells really fragrant and lovely because of the magic. What might players get here? I mean, obviously you can play with this because there may be multiple districts in the city, but what sort of first impression do you want to give?
because I'm just thinking of like the Wizard of Oz thing. So the Emerald City is always the very weird glass-like buildings, but it's quite they're tall, but it's always a big space for places to go. So I think the roads or the canal streets, as it were, are big enough for people. There's not people aren't crowded, but the buildings themselves have almost like a glass-like quality to them. And like you said, I think with the magic, everything is clean and there's no smell, there's no rubbish, there's nothing like that. It just looks pristine, I think.
So it's sterile and clean. There's lots of water everywhere, but the water in the canals are nice and spacious.
Yeah.
And there's lots of glass and crystal and the sort of the look of things. Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Is it very bright or is it a very dark city? Like, is it well lit or very moody and sort of noir?
Oh gosh. For this purpose, I think I like the idea that whoever's in charge, this person, is making it so it's like the best place to be. So that when the sun goes down, everything is beautiful and glistening. It's like, because again, like Wizard of Oz, everyone's like got those green shaped glasses on. Everything is perfect here.
It's a perfect utopia. Yeah. There we go. Now that is a perfect imagery. Okay, fantastic. So what sort of weather and geography on this place? I assume the weather, is it being manipulated to be perfect all the time and regulated, or is it naturally occurring?
Oh yeah, I think everything is perfect. So it's the right temperature, the right and maybe they'll have a vote every month to be like, okay, we're going to have a week of gentle snow, but it's always aesthetic. People are never that cold and never that hot, but it's all about fashion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so the weather is agreed upon in advance. Like, what effect is it that there is some sort of central point from the city and people can see like a field of magic being projected around the city controlling it, or is it just nobody can actually tell where this effect is coming from?
I think
do you want there to be like a bubble effect, or do you want it to be just it is?
I can't remember what the plane was called now. With the one, it's like the Law and Order plane with dwarves, where it's like a clock, and then they have a bit at the top which directs when it's sunny, when it's not. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah,
now,
Arcadia, I think.
Arcadia, yeah. I think something like that. And so I like the idea that it's like almost like if you think of like Disneyland Paris or wherever they have the castle, it's just all comes out from the top of there and spreads like a fountain, I guess, over the whole.
Amazing. That is awesome. So this weather tower, this central district, is that the highest, most important place of the city? Is this where the governance and the mages of importance live, or is this more of a manufacturing and magical sort of construction area? I think
because it's like the highest point. I can imagine seeing a scene where whoever it is looking out onto like a balcony just beneath the weather bit and oversee a bit like a Stirling Castle, essentially. With big points.
Yeah. So buildings, these are all tall buildings, but as it gets closer to the center, is it that the land starts to rise, or is it just the buildings get taller and taller towards the center?
Oh, the land starts to rise, I think. They build somewhere where it's the least floodable, I guess.
Okay, and it feels like a sort of very Arundel, sort of like on a hill. No, I love it, but it is a perfect utopia. Okay, wonderful. And we've already said that the races of this settlement are very Player's Handbook beginning few, so dwarves, elves, humans, and
gnomes
and half orcs, tieflings.
They're rare, but I think they can be a part of it as well.
We're going Player's Handbook, that's fine. And the general makeup of the city, is it going to be human orientated, or is it going to be a real mix, or one race over others?
Ooh, I think so we've done dwarves previously. I think we'll go for high elves. I think, or elves and dwarves. Yeah.
Oh, so the magic users in the high elves are the ones with the longevity and with the magical intuition.
Yes.
Okay. So an elven run society. This is awesome. I love this. This is fantastic. What we're going to do now is we need a general theme to the campaign. It's a political campaign. We know that the nations are in a state of Cold War, and that war could kick off at any time. So what would you like the general feel of the campaign to go? Would you like to keep it incredibly open and let the players decide what the campaign does? Or would you like to have a general theme of like a story event that's going to dictate what happens?
I think there's going to have to be one big story event where in my head, the leaders of the nations come together for something like a conference, like a what they call it, like a peace document, like to go over these issues, and something happens there as a result. So there's always that something there is something to work towards, I guess.
There's an ignition point.
Yes,
okay.
I think so,
So
yeah.
a conference. Okay. So something will go wrong. And is the objective of the story that all of the nations will go to war, or will they just be pushed towards war and it'll be for characters to decide whether or not they do go to war or not?
Yeah, the characters will decide whether or not they push it towards war, or if that happens, who they align themselves with.
Okay, wonderful. And what would you like level 20 characters in this campaign to have achieved? Would you like them to have made their way to be controlling things, or to be landowners, or just incredibly wealthy, or to have destroyed an entire kingdom? Like what, or leave it open?
I think because we've sort of mentioned that the leader of Agatebourgh is a mind flayer in disguise, I think realizing that they have to save their home nation, they have to destroy it in some way. So toppling at least one nation to stop it. Because I in my head, again, I see that this is more of an aggressive nation, even though it's all like lovely and pretty like utopia, but they're willing to act, I guess. Yeah, noticing that there's another agenda there, almost like Game of Thrones. Like, I think it's up to them whether or not they topple it or not to save their own homes.
Okay, wonderful. That's really, really good. Okay, so we're thinking about the first session now. We've got them all involved. What sort of first session atmosphere or sort of plot points have brought the characters together? So we know that they're all citizens of Agatebourgh, and they're sort of from the area. Do they all know each other, or are you going to leave that open, or say that they don't know each other?
Let's go for opposites of what we did before. I think they don't know each other. They've done their own little things, and then this is the first point they would meet together.
Okay. Have they been summoned together, or have they all answered the same call for work? Maybe they're looking for some sort of mercenary work, or maybe they've all been individually selected by some sort of patron for a task of some sort.
Just again, the way this nation works is filing paperwork or something. Like they've applied for whatever it is, and then they've been hand selected to be a group to help with something. So they've been picked together through their application process in Agatebourgh.
Okay, and what would you like their first job to be? Are they exploring somewhere, leaving the city, or are they meeting people and diplomatically doing something to get them used to the politics aspect of it? Or would you like them to be doing some combat within the city, ratting out some sort of like infestation or something that would be needing to be looked at?
I like the political element of it, because I think if people aren't on board with it from the off, then they'll get bored and stuff, and then it would accelerate things sooner. So I think something politically motivated, but I think I agree, something within the city whereby maybe there's talk about an uprising of some sort, or a coup, and one of the branches or one of the council members has asked them to go investigate certain areas and to deal with it as they see fit.
That is a brilliant first idea. Fantastic. So the party have been gathered together maybe because it is less obvious. They're not officially part of the ruling class, so they can go and sniff out. And is it one council member spying on another one who thinks there's some sort of uprising happening, or some sort of corruption or infiltration, something like that?
I'm picturing like Varys the spider and sending his little birds off to go like investigate, but then say, because you're big people with weapons, do deal with it as you see fit. We will be paid extra for your services.
Perfect. So it's one council member trying to get basically a one up on another council member. Exactly. Are these accusations of unrest, are they true or are they false? Is it just politics, or is there actually something going on that could be investigated later?
I think we should just keep it as politics, because I think, because I think
everyone has a little bit of dirt, including the person giving the class.
Exactly. I want it to be, I think with the politics, it's what the players make of it. And so as soon as they decide something, it's like, well, it could have gone the other way, and they could side with the other person. So if I want them to have that choice, and so that every decision they make does have an impact on the campaign in some way, I think it's nicer to have it like that.
Wonderful. Now, the rest of the city, it is pointless to try and go through putting in buildings and names of things, because the yes policy is going to be the most important thing here. Yeah. The city is huge. I mean, how many people do you want to put in it? Like 100,000, 1 million, 10 million? Like 10 million puts it about London size. Oh, 1 million puts it about sort of like Brussels size or Manchester size, or that sort of size of city.
So was that 1 million, did you say? Or
about that.
Yeah, let's go for 1 million then.
Birmingham, Manchester, that sort of stuff. Okay, great. I'm probably way off on my populations here, but okay. So it's big. It's big enough for it to be, if you stood in the middle, the city's beyond what you can see, but it's not London huge in the sense that.
No.
Okay, great. So you've got to have a think about a couple of districts or some ideas of districts of things that you would want in terms of themes of areas. So you've already decided there's a high central ruling bit with lots of tall buildings where all this weather comes from. What sort of other themes of districts do you want, like trading districts or slum districts or watery districts? Have you got any ideas?
Oh, yeah. I think, as with all these places, there probably is like a poorer district or some area in some point, but they all, I don't know, like the glass building, like they're still very pretty buildings, but like the people inside aren't happy. It's like, I'm just thinking of that phrase, was it, don't throw rocks in glass houses. I think it's the idea, like it's very pretty and stuff, but people are unhappy because they don't have magic. They're not getting up the process and they're not earning as much as a result.
Okay, so there are areas of a city that are of lower importance. Yeah, great. Is there a merchant area, or are the merchants scattered throughout the city, or maybe they're scattered throughout and there is also merchants in a particular area?
I think they're scattered throughout.
Scattered throughout. Okay, wonderful. Is there like a transport area or a military area or a keep of some kind, or access to water?
Yeah, I like the idea that there's access to water, maybe like an aqueduct or something like that.
Okay, big aqueduct coming through. Maybe that's where they get a lot of the water from into the city, because there's a lot of people here. Wonderful. And the sort of terrain around, with the city itself is based on a hill, but are there mountains in the distance? Is it very flat around it? Is it very hilly?
Let's go for very flat around it. Like
very flat.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the thing you see for miles around. It is the thing that catches your eye because of the glinting of the glass buildings.
So the way I would think about the world is you need to know a couple of key facts about, there are lots of districts. You don't need to know how many districts there are, but you could say there are 10 districts and have that in your head, but you don't need to worry about naming them all now. You can make them up as you go along based on what the people ask for. So they say, oh, is there a merchant district? And you go, yes, you know what, I would like one. Then you go, right, check that one off. And one of them is the merchant district. I would say you probably need to know how many council members there are. Again, you don't need to name them all. You don't need to give any of them history, but if you've got a number, you can start to introduce sort of things as you go along. And I would say as well, you want to have an idea about other cities in the same way as we did before that are within a connected distance of this city. But again, you don't need to necessarily flesh them out. You just need that one sentence description of sort of a key point that people might want to sort of get hooked on. And lists and tables are your friends. So we've already been going through the named tables in the Xanathar's guide, the Appendix B. So you can use those for the clan names and for the surnames, and especially there's a lot of elven names in there. I would recommend you use surnames, and maybe like one council member has a surname that all of the rest of the family use, regardless of whether they're related to them, maybe. You could do it like that, or maybe everybody has a different name, or maybe nobody has a last name and it gets very confusing, or you can do it sort of any way you want. And I would also Google like a list of pub names or something like that, because you can always use those for sort of just dipping into when you need. But if we have a think, and I'm going to just, again, I'll ask you 3 questions to get you into the idea of building the city and that sort of first campaign.
Okay.
So if I were to say, right, in the first session, you introduce Quest and you say, right, this councillor is asking you to investigate a second, and the party go out and say one of the party decides, okay, the best way that's going to happen is if my character goes and investigates into the local seedy tavern where these sort of things are likely to happen. How would you go about sort of putting that into the campaign?
Putting it into the campaign. So we define a sort of slums area. I think I'd ask them to sort of, ask around, and depending on that information, I think I'd come up with like 3 pubs, but I think one of them, we'll say 2 of them are infiltrated with almost, I like the idea that there is some sort of underground sort of police militia in some way. So I think that if it's too low on the thing, they'll hear of a pub, but it's going to be full of militia. So we would report back to the council that there is new adventurers in town who are asking questions about council members, and it could be a bit of trouble, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And you use the random name generator to pop those in, and
Yeah.
you can sort of flesh them out as you go through.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. The other place you could also look is whenever they go to a new place or a tavern or a building or anything like that. Again, the Dungeon Master's Guide. If you have a look at pages 293 onwards, there are lots of tables about filling in dungeons and different rooms and things like that, and sort of putting traps in. But if you go to page 299, there are tables with general furnishings and appointments, or sort of things that you can put into a place. So for instance, you roll a 17 on this D100 and there's a cabinet in there. You can use that table to put something into each place the players go that is the feature of that place. So say we roll a 17. Actually, no, let's do it. So we go into the pub and roll a D100.
Okay. Oh, we've got, oh God, it's just a 2.
A 2. An armchair. An armchair. So how would you put an armchair or armchairs into this pub to make it a distinctive and memorable thing for the players?
Ooh, okay. I'm thinking back to uni days. I'm thinking like my union bar was just full of horrible mismatching armchairs and stuff like and sofas and stuff. So I think this whole tavern, there are inappropriately large, like there's no like a 2-person table or a 4-person like booth. In fact, it's just armchairs and sofas, and then there are the tiniest tables in between. So it's you have to share it with someone else. You always have to, you can't have your own private thing. There's always going to be a couple more people because there's just so many of these things.
Brilliant. That's memorable, and that's just from one roll on there. So there's loads of tables there. There's also like you can like hazy and humid and clear with a mist covering the floor and that sort of thing. Like different effects you can have in this place. Religious artifacts and utensils and books. There's all kinds of random checklists for you to roll into. Okay, that's really good. So if I were to then say, well, my player decides that actually this council member asking about a second council member, well, I don't want to get involved in that direct politics. I'm going to go and ask a third council member their opinion on it.
Oh, shit.
How would you deal with that? How would you go about putting a third council member into the game?
Ooh, okay. So so we talked about districts before, right? I think there's actually there's 11 districts. So there's a center bit where the weather tower is, etc. But I think each of the districts are ruled over by one council member, and that council member, all council members have basically a GP surgery. And they get questions asked, and so I guess they can make an appointment and go and just ask questions as if they were part of the town, essentially.
Brilliant. So, brilliant. And you could use the naming lists to name people, and you could that's great. You've got the hang of this, right? So we'll throw the last thing. So let's say after a couple of sessions, the characters have done a bit of digging, they had a bit of success, and one of the rewards of that is that they've all been given a lot of gold.
Yes.
And one of them comes to you and says, I would like to buy a tome that increases my charisma by 2 points.
Oh, really?
How would you do that? Like how would you sort of think about whether the city could cater for that sort of thing?
Okay, so this item I know is very, very rare. It's legendary. And so it'd be quite a hard thing to find anyway. But because magic is so commonplace and stuff, it's not impossible. So I think I would make sure that I'd like the idea that, okay. So there'll be various sort of, I think there would be like a main sort of magic shop or company or whatever where you would go to and make requests and say like, I want to, find out more about this thing. And they might have outposts in the other districts. But because it's such a big item, they'll be like, we need to just do a background check or anything like that because there's so much paperwork and stuff. But any information, if they're looking for an item that is that powerful, it's going to go straight up to the head of the council because that's such an unusual purchase. So, yeah.
Got ya. There we go.
It might take a few days to get it. Or it might take we'll take some time because of the paperwork. But I think because that's impacted instantly that they are now on the radar of this Mind Flayer council member.
Wonderful. So there you go. You've built an entire world that people can like play around in. You can have a campaign from. Do you want to give us just a very brief outline of the world you've created and what you think of that?
Okay, so what we know of this world is that there are limited divine presence or intervention. It's mostly mapped out. I think you would get a map of this easily, but it might be different interpretations from different nations. there is so much history to this place that it is very hard to remember, but it is a very political atmosphere. Anything you do is going to be influenced by or influences politics in some way. And the biggest thing that everyone has an access to magic, whether or not they are very, very powerful or not. Yeah. But we have these sort of 4 nations that are at the heart of this campaign. We have the First Nation, which is essentially in magical utopia. Everything looks pristine and beautiful, led by one sort of leader surrounded by their own sort of cabinet. There's mysteriousness in that sort of sense, but each council member or a member of the cabinet has their own district to look after and stuff, and they're always piling off each other. And I think that's commonplace, known for that. You've got 3 other nations that are at political odds, I guess, with this nation. You've got the one that is very similar to them, that is just led by one ruler who is generally seen as a very positive force for good and does what they think is best, which seems to be in common with the people. But the way they get around things to get almost the same ends, like they do different means to it, and that's where they clash with this First Nation. Then you also have the militaristic nation who sort of refuse to indulge this sort of magic nonsense. Like, yeah, everyone has access to it, but what is more important, if you're stabbed, you're stabbed, and if you're stabbed hard, that's the end of you. Because there's this whole sort of undead thing where everyone in every nation is affected by whether or not there's a 50% chance that they're going to come back as undead. And as soon as you're undead, it is quite frightening, and you are just instantly not exiled, but you are drawn to this city-state in between the nations. And then the final one is just a bureaucratic administration things who just doesn't care about magic, doesn't care about weaponry. It's all about the books and the research and stuff, and thinking that the best way forward is through looking back and making sure we know as much as we can, because that's the best way to advance.
Yeah, perfect. That is a perfect foundation for a campaign. And again, I look forward to playing in it. That's great fun. I could see you running a political campaign. This is brilliant. Man.
It sounds very stressful week on week to think of anything political without just going to BBC News and just copy and pasting it.
I know, but it's all about not overthinking it and just keeping it vague and then filling in the blanks as you get there. Like, it's otherwise we don't have like weeks upon weeks to build in everything, and so you know what all the people are called. You can kind of make it up as you go along.
Oh no, brilliant.
Wonderful.
Oh.
Well, there we go. I'm glad you enjoyed.
Yeah, that was fun. Let's do it again. No, that was really, really fun, actually. And yeah, as you said, it's such a simple process of I certainly felt it was much easier. I know, obviously, for you're just asking questions, but I found it much easier to bounce off ideas. And I'm thinking, like you said, something I think is very, very silly and like, oh no, it's not original at all, you're very excited about. So actually, that's quite a nice process. So maybe having someone who isn't necessarily going to be playing in the campaign, but actually having someone to bounce ideas off is actually very, very useful for any writing, really. So no,
absolutely. These things are very easy to do in pairs, I think. Get 2 DMs get together and bounce ideas off each other's like campaigns, and you'll be amazed at what you can come up with.
So Ryan, I know we had a lot about creating stuff and being sort of like, oh, what worlds can we get? Would you like to know what I've got planned for my 2-part?
Oh, another, right, 2-parter. Yeah, go for it. What have you got planned?
It's not as exciting as I just put it, but I was thinking to myself, okay, what can I do to bounce off this? Like, you're creating your own worlds and stuff like that. And actually, we actually covered it a little bit, actually talking about religions and gods in the world. And I thought to myself, like, okay, I don't know much about having religions in worlds or having stuff. And I know there is obviously, like you said, is it Dawnforge is the main sort of pantheon of D&D, Forgotten Realms religions. I thought, sod that. You can do that, or you can create your own, but I was like, I actually want to get into a proper meaty system that has a lot of information about gods and stuff, and that can really influence a campaign. So again, I know we're going away from sort of what we've created, but I'm like, what is a campaign or a module or anything like that that's full of gods which influence how you do quests? And it turns out, Ryan, they've just released this book. So we're going to be looking at Mythic Odysseys of Theros, because there's a whole section on the different sort of Greek-inspired gods, what's it called? Gods of Theros, where basically there is about 10 plus gods your character has to be a part of, and they're influenced by in the whole campaign. So that is what we will be looking at.
That is cool. There you go. That's a totally different take on what we were just talking about. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, there we go. Well, what are you getting up to in the meantime? Maybe where can we find you?
Well, when I'm not creating political disasters in my own head, I am... My name's Fiona, and I am a disaster. I run the What Am I Rolling podcast, which is a twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast. As always, it's going very well. We've got the run up to Christmas. I am doing one-shots. By the time this comes out, it'll already been passed, but I'm doing Jason Statham's Big Vacation live online for a group of improvisers who I think have never played D&D or any RPGs at all. So that'll be
wow, that'd be fun.
That'll be fun, and it's going to be done in an hour. So let's talk about streamlining at some point when you come to your campaigns. But yes, that's what I'm up to. Ryan, is there anything you'd like to plug, or what are you up to these days?
Oh, well, you can always find me on Discord if you want to come and say hi. I've got the Ursa Ryan Discord, of which I have my YouTube channel, Ursa Ryan, if you want to come and see me do things on computer games. But yeah, come and chat about D&D. It's always good to hear from people, and yeah, it's always good fun. I want to hear about all your worlds you've made.
Yes, definitely. Please write in or email in or tweet me and then be like, I've made this world. And I go, that's much cooler than ours. Damn.
No, your world, you've made 2 incredible worlds over the course of the last 3 sessions. It's brilliant. And it literally took, like, I was chatting it through. If you sat down and did it by yourself, you could have made all of that in about half an hour, probably. Maybe. Both sessions. Easy. Give it a go. Easy. Try it at home.
Yeah, this is something you can do at home for sure.
Exactly. And here's one I made earlier.
Here's a world I made earlier. Great. Well, until next time, friends, thank you for listening, and we will hear from you. We will talk to you. We'll do something with you next time.
See you later.
Bye.